Hi everyone, thanks for clicking on this video and watching. This is basically an update sort of where we're at with our racing program and everything else in between. So yeah, let's get into it and have a bit of a debrief of where we're at the moment. So you've probably seen already an update video on the RX7 over on fullBOOST. If you haven't, just pause this video now and go watch it first and come back later to this. But essentially, across it is, this car's now done. So it is completed, done a bit of a tune up on the transbrake, got some data, everything's working as it should. And yeah, we're pretty much ready to hit the dyno. I'm almost in two minds of if I can't organise a dyno within the next couple of weeks, because everyone's probably going to be closed for Christmas, I'm almost in two minds of actually taking this out to Heathcote Park, maybe the weekend of 19th of December or something. Pretty hard time of the year to get out and get free and do stuff, but maybe even not to give it a full quarter mile pass or even an eighth mile pass and that, but maybe just to test some of the 60-foot stuff and make sure the thing drives straight and stuff like that. I've got a trailer now, which we'll cover off shortly. So, don't know, we'll see how we go. You know, it's always sort of fraught with danger about taking a car that's not really tuned, but with the transbrake sort of tuning, it does give us the window of knowing that it's, you know, it's pretty well sorted already in that. So it shouldn't take much time on the dyno. So maybe even at the racetrack, if we just sort of sent it a bit, we could creep up on it, it might be okay. But yeah, other than that, done a whole heap of work, which you would have seen over on fullBOOST. So that's where that's at. One of the most important things that sort of held up our progress with the RX7 is just over there. So let's go take a look at it. All right, so one of the things that held us up a bit we were waiting on was this little chestnut right here. So I bought a trailer of my own. The reason I did that was because one of the biggest pain in the ass things when you've got a race car is organising transport there. And if you don't have your own trailer, you know, you've got to book weeks in advance of the trailer that you might want, and then, you know, you've got to go pick it up, bring it home, load your car up then, and yeah, then after your racing's done, you've got to come home, empty everything out of the trailer or the car off the trailer. You've got to then unpack the car, whatever, take the trailer back to where it's got to go to, and then come home again. So it's a bit of a pain in the ass. Around here, about 15 minutes away, there's basically one trailer available, and then it's about 25 minutes to the next sort of trailer. So I mean, you know, after racing a whole day, driving out to Heathcote and then coming home, might get home, then have to fully, you know, 2.5 hour drive, have to fully unload the trailer. Then I've got to do a 50-odd minute round trip just to return the trailer and get home again. So it was just going to be a bit of a pain in the ass. But the number one reason is I'm going to be racing for a fair while. I've been racing, you know, for 20 years on and off of racing here and there or whatever. And that this thing, number one question everyone's going to ask, of course, is going to say, how much did it cost? So it cost, I put a winch on myself, but as it sits here with a couple of the extras, it's got an extra tyre, extra spare tyre on it. They normally only come with one, I think. So with that, it was about, I think it worked out to about $9 grand delivered here. So what I worked out is when I hire a trailer, it normally costs about $300. I normally hire it for about 36 hours just because it's such a pain with setting up beforehand and might be getting it back late. But yeah, I probably need to start, I was probably going to have to look to start hiring for 48 hours. But basically, if you do $9,000 divided by 300, which is about how much it costs to hire the trailer, that's 30 trailer hires. Within 30 trailer hires, this pays for itself. So I look at this and say, I would only have to hire a trailer for 30 times before I would have cost myself the same amount of money that I've got here. But now I've got an asset. So if I ever for some reason stop racing, never want to race again, I can sell this. I can sell it for like pretty good money too. So I don't see this as like an asset unlike a race car or a project car or that where you dump a whole heap of money into it, and it's a big L basically. You take a huge loss on it, but it's your hobby, it's fun, it doesn't matter. I don't see this as something I'm ever going to sort of take a loss on. So let's take a quicker look at it now and yeah, explain exactly what it is. All right, so my nice new fresh paintwork's a bit scratched up because I had a couple of big drums of methanol in here that I had to drag off. I don't know if you've ever tried to deadlift 205 drum of methanol off a trailer, but it ain't easy. It's not like I have a forklift just sitting there or something. So they're a bit scratched up there, but you know, them's the brakes. It will get scratched eventually. This thing's got LED lights, 2 tires and airbags. And if you weren't aware already of what kind of trailer it is, well, here we go, there it is. It is a Tilta trailer. So Tilta by name, Tilta by description, because this pin here, what happens is this pin comes out, and as you can see, this part of it basically is separate from that main drawbridge sort of thing and the suspension. And what's in here is an airbag, and you can let the air out or pump it up. And so essentially, a bit of the airbag suspension on here. Essentially what I'll do is you have it hitched to your car, and then release the pin, pump up the airbags, and the trailer will just tilt up, which means no more having to worry about ramps. Yeah, the low entry point is good. It's only like a 7 or 8 degree angle or something, because this is actually really low to the ground. It doesn't have any axles running through here, so the trailer bed is actually pretty low to the ground. And yeah, it's really easy to load. It's got its own, I mean, it's got, you can see how many D points it's got. It's got 3 on one side, 3 on the other, and then it's also got another like shuckle point there, and then it's got tie downs there, which make it super easy just to sort out the trailer. And also means if I ever want to do anything, I mean, you know, if I know I'm going racing on a Sunday, I can load the trailer up on a Tuesday night, Wednesday night or whatever, and everything's good to go. You know, I'm not running around wasting an entire Saturday organising, you know, wasting my Saturday just to go racing Sunday. So this essentially means more time to do whatever I need to do with family and friends or whatever, and that on a Saturday. You know, I basically regain my Saturdays again instead of having to plan to go racing sort of thing. So it's definitely a time saver. In the end, realistically, it's a money saver, because once I've hit those 30 times I've towed the car, it's paid for itself. So every time after that, you know, it's free essentially. You know, I'm not paying for it anymore versus if I was hiring. So yeah, I put a winch on it. You can get a winch for them, but yeah, I just got this one from, can't remember where, and I just welded, it's like 10mm plate or something, and then just here on there and just welded it. It's got controller, it can be wired or wireless, whatever. Just unplug it there and it becomes wireless, but it's got a fairly long lead. And yeah, you can drive it up if you want, or just winch it up or down, doesn't really matter. Either way, it's easy, but yeah, that's pretty much the update with the trailer. Really pumped to have it. One thing that you'll see also that's not here, but it always used to sit here, that's in the space where the trailer is now, is the F350. So let's have a bit of a chat about that. So yeah, the F350 is gone, and it's yeah, went to somewhere in regional New South Wales, I think. An older guy come and drove a car down here, drove his car down here, put his car on the back of it and drove the F350 back with his car. So good luck to him in the future, whatever he's got planned for. I think he's got some old muscle cars and stuff like that, but essentially the F350, we've gone off it before of why we didn't finish it. It was finished, trust me. I mean, the guy drove it back like 8 hours plus to regional New South Wales and that. So the truck was finished. We just never registered it on the road because I decided it's not what the direction I wanted to go in there. You'll see that what's out there now is the Jeep and the trailer combo, and I've driven now the Jeep for 3 months. I've only done still 2,000 Ks of it, but trust me when I say I don't think there's a person alive that would say, I would rather be driving in a 1976 F350 for almost a 5-hour round trip to go racing versus towing in a Jeep. The Jeep is just comfortable, like ice cold air, red hot heater, all the mod cons, all the technology, you know, you've got everything in that thing. And yeah, the F350 is a 1976 truck. So no matter how much we tried to improve on the comfort and the ride and all that, it's still a 1976 truck. So it has gone. It was a fun little project, but I mean, like all sort of YouTubers, the projects that they build aren't always, you don't see them every single day, and they're not forever sort of thing. So it was something that was intended originally to be something that we'd have forever and a day to, but yeah, we finished it, we drove it a bit and just decided, no thanks, I think I'll move that on. So that's gone. VF Commodore, still for sale. The market seems to be really flat at the moment with that. We've obviously got, you know, you've got the COVID sort of boom, but Christmas isn't a great time to sell cars. Traditionally, people obviously got, you know, if they've got bills to pay, they've got Christmas expenses and that coming up, so it's not a great time to sell the car. I don't have a massive, huge COVID tax on it either. If you look at it looked at the price online, and essentially, you know, if I ran it through even like the car sales sort of price guide or whatever and that, and normally those things are, you know, will give you sort of an underpriced sort of value because they want you to sort of move the car. My car's basically priced exactly at what that says. It's also pretty much one of the cheapest ones available in Victoria, and haven't had overly that many inquiries in that. So that's all right. I'll just leave it there. It's for whatever. I don't care. I'm not going to give it away. They can sit there for, you know, a year for all I care. I'm not really worried in that. So that one's sitting there. This one's ready to go. And we haven't talked much about what's hiding behind here. So let's go and have a quick look at that. And yeah, maybe work out a plan of what's going to go happen with that car going forward. All right. So this absolute dumpster fire that's sitting here, as you can see, it is my parts holder at the moment. This is a 1973 Mazda 929 sedan. Was purchased as is, sort of over the internet during COVID, got delivered here. Didn't look at it for a long time. I only looked at it about 2 months ago and realized some parts on it weren't as they were advertised. So I've got to actually work out with the seller what we're doing. I think he's got a big brake kit on the front of one of his old cars that should fit this. So I just haven't had time or got around to measuring the hub. He's going to make up a little hub spacer for it. So get that sorted, and then I can get a big front brake kit, then sort out all the other stuff that some of the stuff that's missing on it myself. Whatever. That's that just happens sometimes. So yeah, it's in pretty average average condition. It's been sandblasted, so it holds no secrets at least, but the story it tells isn't overly great. So when I purchased it, I could see, you know, I saw all of this side very clearly, sort of in the pictures. Couldn't really see this in the pictures, which is, you know, one of the, obviously it's had a rear quarter repair job, and it's shocking. And I couldn't see the door properly in the pictures. Actually, the photos online don't really have had any of that that side of the car much, but yeah, it's that side of the car's a disaster zone. So I probably need to get a driver's door, because it is really ruined. But you know, it's a long-term project. I've already got a brand new windscreen for it, got some nice new tags for it. I'm pretty sure that the grille and all the chrome and all that stuff is with it. I think I've got my FD RX7 seats. I'll probably put those in it. But the biggest thing about it is most people would look at this and go, oh, yep, that's an RX4. And yeah, basically it's exactly the same car as an RX4. It's not much different. But whilst I do have essentially a rotary engine, you know, pretty much for it, I've still got the engine from the old 626, the Series 4 one, that, you know, that basically ran 9s, and that could go straight into it. But I'm thinking I'm going to put a V8 in it. So don't know what you guys think, but I'm thinking of going V8 with like an LS, a variety sort of thing, either a 5.7 or 6 litre or something with, and I don't know to go manual or even or even the factory 6-speed, or just even a 4-speed, like a 4L80 or something. But essentially, this is not a race car. I want something that's just a fun cruiser, but yeah, and maybe something I'd have fun at the circuit with, on the off chance I decide to, you know, just want to go blast around an event sort of like that. So I don't know, I'm leaning towards sort of the T56 sort of 6-litre or whatever combo that come in like a V whatever Commodore on that, but yeah, I don't know. I'm still stuck. I don't know if measurements of even a Barra or something like that. So this car butt is, you know, who knows? I may not even start it in 2022. It's an ultra long-term project. Now that this thing's essentially done, that is completo. But you know, once you start racing, things go wrong. And you know, if that has any issues, this is always going to take priority, because racing this in 2022 is the #1 priority. But there's a couple of customer cars out there that are either pretty much finished or half finished, or been waiting for me to clear up time in that. So I'd say once this is dynoed and we've given a few shakedown passes and had a run, I will probably get a car in here that I built, you know, a long time ago. Then I had a couple of issues with the fuel pumps in it. It finished that off, which is a little R100, so with a 12A turbo on it, Microtech and all that kind of stuff. So we'll probably get that one up and running, and we'll run you through that car, and we'll finish that off so it can get back on the road. But and then, yeah, if there's anyone else's cars that, you know, there's a lot of cars out there that people have said they wanted me to sort of work on that, and I'm been very time poor in the last few years, and I'm still a little bit reluctant to sort of work on other cars at the moment. But if people still want me to do some stuff, we can look into that. But then once that all dies down, we may eventually get back into this, but who knows. But so this episode's basically a tale of two halves. Part 1 was going to be all the car updates. Part 2 is some of the stuff that I basically started the channel for, which is some technical sort of data sort of stuff. So let's spend the next 20 odd minutes or something going through the tune-up of the RX7 and explaining some of the data and what it means, and how we get about to putting a tune-up in this car. Right, so something else that the main reason essentially I created this channel was pretty much basically tech videos and this kind of stuff, which is reviewing the race events or what we've done, if we've gone to the dyno, if we've gone to the racetrack, or whatever we're doing in that. So give you a bit of a flavour of that now. Yeah, let's have a bit of a look at some of the data and some of the tune-up stuff, and run through some of the Fueltech in my setup here for the FT600 setup in the RX7. So for those who don't know for some reason about the car or whatever, it's a 93 RX7, has 13B turbo engine, 88mm Garrett turbos on methanol, has Fueltech injectors, Fueltech FT600 ECU, has a hardwire electronics PDM, and an FT Spark ignition setup with nano wideband and the EGT box and an input expander box. So a fair bit of the Fueltech catalog in this car. So normal setup sort of things. If I go here, I can sort of show you some of the what data we've got going into this thing. So in terms of inputs, you know, back pressure, intake air temp, brake pressure, fuel pressure, engine temp, oil pressure, nitrous pressure, trans pressure and temp, multi-function button, which is basically a single button on my steering wheel, which enacts the line lock, the bump staging control, and the scramble extra boost also through one button, depending on, you know, certain parameters. TPS, wheel speed, blower valve position, which is basically a sensor on top of the turbo smart blower valve, which senses how far the piston's sort of moving. Shock sensors, wastegate pressure, a drive shaft RPM, wastegate position, two-step wastegate position number 2 as well. So the two-step is basically the other button on the steering wheel, which activates the two-step, which activates the transbrake setup as well. So what we've got there, also wastegate pressure there, that's based around dome pressure on top of the wastegate, which is how we regulate things for our boost control and that. So we also have input expander box, which has converter pressure, oil temperature, and I don't know, I think there's two other things on it, a couple of other things on it too. So some stuff I don't have set up yet that I'm looking at getting set up would be turbo speed and possibly like laser ride height or something like that. But this is a fair bit of data already as it is. And yeah, the best part I like about the Fueltech obviously is you can just go to the I can change any of this whenever I want, and I can click here, go to wiring harness diagram, and it gives me an exact pin out of what is what basically. And then not just like, oh yeah, pin 2 goes to wire 2, it's actually telling me that, this pin number 4 is number 2 secondary fuel injector. So it's a really, really fantastic feature on this ECU. If we also then go to outputs, what you'll see here is that there's not a lot of outputs actually being used by this ECU, and the reason for that is the Hardwire Electronics PDM actually has 25 outputs, and the Fueltech communicates with it via CAN, which is just 2 wires. So a lot of the calculations and a lot of things that need to get done are actually done by the brains of the Hardwire PDM. So you can see here blue outputs. These are just negative ground switching outputs. You can see I've got a transbrake solenoid one, which goes to an external solid state relay, and then I've got a boost activated one, which is again something for my what one is it for? The dump valves actually. So basically, essentially, once when the two-step button is pressed, and it activates that, so it opens up basically opens the dump, so it's bleeding off the converter pressure in and out. And then once I get to a certain boost pressure, I'll still be tuning this kind of stuff once I get to the track. I think I've got it set to about 8 psi at the moment. It then turns off at 8 psi, and it shuts those valves and fills the converter again. So again, you can see here ignition, and then no other outputs there. And then what I do have is actually quite a lot of the yellow output. So blue output, grey output, both of those are negative switching essentially. So or switch to ground. So where you would normally maybe run a relay where it's a 5-pin relay, a 4-pin relay where you've got power going in and a trigger going into it, and then a function going out of it, and then a line to the ground. You would put the blue and the grey outputs on that line to the ground, so the ECU switches it, activates that relay, and then sends the power to whatever you want to turn on basically. The yellow outputs can act like that as well, but they can also be the opposite. They can be 12-volt switch. So wastegate increase and decrease are that. My thermatic fan is on that, and that's because that runs to, a lot of them that are here actually run to my PDM, because the PDM, it's very hard to sort of do a negative ground trigger on the PDM. So basically what we're doing is we're feeding it 12 volts when we turn something on. So thermofan number 2 is actually my trans fan, the transcooler fan on the transcooler. Line lock output, again, it's to activate the power for the line lock. So once that multifunction button activates, it then sends that output to the PDM. And then the transbrake secondary solenoid is something I probably don't need anymore, something I was during when I was testing, but basically it was just sending 12 volts to the PDM to say the transbrake's on now, pretty much. So I may still be able to use that and not even have to use the boost activated output, because I can probably do some calcs in the PDM, which I'll run over maybe in another episode on. I'll do a whole deep dive on the PDM on what it is, how it works, and how I've set it up. But for now, this is pretty much it. The biggest thing you'll find here in future episodes is there's no secrets here. Here's my tune-up. That's what the primary map looks like. This is what the secondary map looks like. Here's my target air-fuel ratio sort of tables. And yeah, I've got some other stuff. So engine start, this thing starts really, really well with the Fueltech injectors in the primary. It's got 520 pound an hour injectors in the primaries, and it starts incredibly well. And yeah, in terms of ignition, here's the ignition sort of timing. It's not overly aggressive at the moment. Once we get to the racetrack, we'll start reading spark plugs and stuff, and we'll find out where this where this engine needs to be, because you know, you can have your EGT sensors and you can have your air fuel ratio sensors and stuff, but the spark plug is the only one that's actually in the combustion chamber that can tell you the actual real life story of what happened. So we'll do a bit of spark plug reading too, but in terms of all that, we've run it up on the transbrake, so we'll go to the data logger here, and what you'll see is a big long curve. I'll just get it set up to where it needs to be. What you'll see here is that it seems like it's taking a long time to come up on the transbrake. So that's basically going from, you know, full throttle sort of about here. It was almost full throttle. It's only, as you can see here, it's 90%. But let me just clear up some of this stuff now before we get started. All right, so what we can see here in the tune-up is I go balls in on the throttle almost. You can see up here it's 92%. I don't know why I only had 92% throttle and then I went 100 later. Again, I was just still testing stuff. This is only about the 10th pull on the transbrake. So what you can see here is, I'll give you a, I mean, you should be able to read, actually if I put them here, you'll be able to read a bit better, but here's some parameters here. There's, you know, even more data here from everything, but basically what you can see here is, basically if I put it here, what you'll see is the top line's TPS, this line here is ignition timing, this is the rear cylinder EGT, this is the front rotor, rear cylinder, front rotor and rear rotor EGT. This thicker green line is RPM, and it's thicker because I've clicked up here. Every time you click on here, it sort of highlights the trace or whatever. This line here is the map line, and as you can see, it sort of follows a pretty distinct curve with RPM. Then you've got sort of your O2, and then the target O2. So you can see it's pretty close, and then there's a correction percentage here as well. We'll leave that off. We've got EGT there. You got wastegate target pressure here. Now this is a dome pressure. So basically, I have an 8. I think it's an 8 psi spring in this thing. So if we, you know, we can highlight some of these later and just look at some of the stuff. But initially, what we can look at is if I turn sort of the, we'll turn the EGTs off, and we'll just have a look at some of the air fuel ratio tune-up. Don't really need TPS because it's 100% the whole time sort of thing. But what you'll see here is we initially dive in from no throttle here to full throttle, and it goes incredibly rich. So as you can see, it's a 3.0 air fuel ratio, and FT Spark is doing a fantastic job to burn that mixture basically. No misfires, no carrying on or whatever, but it's, you know, there's probably a fair bit, you know, this is a drag car, and quite honestly, I can tune that out of it pretty easily. It's you know, there might be a bit too much in acceleration trims and stuff like that, but you can see how quickly it comes straight back to target anyway, so, you know, I don't really care, to be honest. And then, yeah, you can see here that right here, it's starting to build some boost, 1 pound, and you can see that the target air fuel ratio, which is that table I had before, that's basically what I put in there to tell the ECU, hey, this is the air fuel ratio that I want to see at this point. You can see the O2 is actually rich, it's 4.65, and the correction here is saying it's pulling out 9% of fuel from the base map to try and get just to 4.65. So what it's telling me is that it's overall here is it's not just 9.5% too rich, it's much more than 9.5% too rich, and it's just I've only allowed it basically at this low load point to take sort of probably 10% or 9.5% of fuel out, so it's taking the maximum amount of fuel out that I can. Here we keep on going through, and you can see by now the tune-up's starting to get very close to one another. So now we're only at we're at 4,000 RPM, we're at 2.5 pounds of boost, and now the tune-up's spot on basically. We've at we are at 4.8 air fuel, our target's 4.8, and our correction 0. So as we keep going on, you can see it actually is now richer. We're at about 4,700 RPM. We're almost 5.5 pound of boost, and we're still only targeting 4.8, but we're down to 4.4, and it's trying to pull that minus 5%, which is all I'm allowing it to do. Now the reason why it is rich here, so rich, is because I purposely want this to be about 5 to 10% rich, because being 10% rich isn't going to hurt parts. Being 10% lean going to hurt some stuff pretty quick. So as you can see here, we get closer. We're pretty much back in the window right about here. There, you know, our target's 4.3. We're at about 4.4, 0% correction. Starting to really make some load here pretty quick. You know, the converter's coming on there. So it's gone from, you know, at 4750 RPM at 5 pounder boost to being at, you know, 1300 RPM sort of later. At 6,000, we're at 15 pounder boost. So we're in the tune-up window there. We're going good. What you'll see here is the ignition timing come right down to a flat line. So it's gone at that point from about 22 degrees to about 15. And you'll see here, it's pretty rich. It's I am not allowing the ECU to pull any fuel. That's why the correction is nothing. But we're about 3.4 air fuel, and our target was about 3.7. So the reason why the lines here, you can see the lines over here are jagged, and the air fuel ratio is a bit jagged, is because that is 6750 is my two-step limiter cut on the transbrake. So it is bouncing. I've allowed it to have a window of about 200 RPM. So basically, it's jumping between sort of 6750 to down to as much as, like, you know, 6550, and it's just fluctuating on that limiter. So I might tighten up that amount, but I mean, it's pretty much fine there. You can see at the start of right when that happens, right when it hits the 6750 limiter, it's at 21 pounder boost, and it pretty much holds at 21 to 20, you know, mid 22 pounder boost. And if you look down here, our top of our wastegate pressure is 16, and the wastegate target was 16 as well at that point. So that means that we're holding that. So again, 8 psi sort of spring, I think it was 7.5, 8 psi spring. We've got, you know, almost 23 pounder boost. It's pretty much spot on. And it's, even though you're not always going to have, you know, 10 pounder dome pressure and 10 pound spring is going to equal 20 pounder mat pressure. You know, you've got back pressure and stuff to worry about, things like that. So this is within half a psi at map based on dome pressure and spring pressure sort of thing. So that's really, really great. Some other stuff. So if we get rid of the O2 stuff here and we go to EGT. So the main reason to do all the transbrake tuning is to put a pretty close map in it before we go to the dyno, save some time. But the other reason is to make sure that things are working, essentially, that we want to see what's working. And if we see one thing here that I want to see working, if up to here we're climbing, we've still got about, you know, 18 degrees timing in it, load starting to build. And then what happens is, you know, we get up to sort of a peak of at 720. There's a difference in, because I haven't set up any split between the rotors of extra fuel or less fuel from one to the other. But it's about, you know, it's about average there around 650 or something like that. I can even just sort of do this one to make it easier. But what you'll see is it's a little bit hard to see because it sort of is the crossover point. But if we just look at ignition timing, you can see that basically, where's the one here? This was below, so I might use this as the better target on that. But you can see it was climbing. It was getting up to like up the high 600s, and then bang, we hit sort of 15 degrees sort of ignition timing, and whack, like it pulls a decent amount of temperature out of the combustion process, which is exactly what I wanted to check to make sure everything was working, that everything was working correctly as it should, which is what we want to do. So that's great, because EGTs are a critical part of tuning methanol rotary. Like air fuel ratio will get in the window. EGT is what we'll keep an eye on in terms of data to make sure we're still in that window. And then spark plug reading, once we start sending it, is where we'll really find out what we can do. So in terms of spark plugs, you know, that'll be our, you know, fuel sort of window, where we'll look at the top of the spark plug ring. Normally is nice and shiny when it goes in. We're looking to burn off probably 50% of that shininess off the top of it. And that'll tell us that we're really safe basically with fuel. And then we can work out, do we want to add a degree of timing? Do we want to add 5% of fuel? Do we want to subtract 5% of fuel? I know that the timing should be pretty spot on. We wouldn't do both at the same time. We'd want to do one or the other and to see what's right. So I think, up to, 40 plus pound of boost, 15 degrees of timing is pretty much right there sort of for a rotary. So we'll keep it at that. If we go down here, you can see some of the data. We replaced that alternator like we said, and now we're getting sort of 13.8 volts, which is about right. I don't think the battery hadn't been on the charger for a while, and that, so 13.8 is pretty good with at sort of 6,500, 6,750 RPM. She's got some oil pressure, 130 psi. Fuel pressure is good. This is one thing I was a bit worried about with fuel pressure was the both the pulleys are the same size on the mechanical fuel pump almost. They're only, I think one's at 32 tooth, one's at 28 tooth. Normally you'll see it, they'll be underdriven by sort of 50%. So whatever the engine RPM is, it's sort of like half that, but this is almost, only, it's sort of almost 90% of engine RPM. So the fuel, what it tells me here is that the Turbo Smart regulator is bypassing the fuel I need to. And, from a base, differential base pressure of around about, I think it starts there about 58 psi. By 6750, we're at 90 psi. So we've raised, we've put 22 pound of boost into it, and it's raised 30 psi fuel pressure, which is going to happen because obviously it's flowing a whole heap of fuel. But I know now that even if we put another 20 psi of boost into it, another 2000 RPM, it might, hopefully it might raise to like 120 psi sort of thing. It might put another 30 psi on it, so which, for these injectors is completely fine. Back pressure is basically 1-to-1, what we're noticing here. So it's 19.8, so let's call it 20 psi. We've got, we've got 20, what do we have? We've got 22 in the map, and we've got 20 in the exhaust system. So 1-to-1 exhaust back pressure is fine. That, what we have to keep an eye on that is basically once we start making RPM to like 9,000 RPM to see if it's still at 1-to-1, and also if we're going to put 30, 35, 40, whatever pound of boost into it to see what that ratio is. Because if it gets a bit out of control, it'll start being very hard to control boost with, I don't have CO2 boost control on this thing, I just have manifold pressure boost set up. And also it will make it harder to make power because it basically will say that it's choking the engine. So if we get up to 2-to-1 or more, we may have to look to put a larger rear housing on it. This is the second smallest. There's 4 rear housings in the GTX 47 lineup, and this is a 1.08 housing, so it's the second housing you can buy basically. So I've got two sizes larger to go up to if I want to. So torque converter pressure 471 psi. I don't think so. The sensor gets pegged somewhere and it just gives a wrong reading basically. I think it's it just gets pegged at 150 about there, which is I've only got 150 psi sensor in there for some reason, and then it just the 470 reading is just wrong because it's out of bounds basically. I haven't calibrated that nitrous sensor either. You'll see things like engine coolant pressure. That's just because I have a sensors and I have input, so I just put that on there for the sake of it. And as you can see, it's doing nothing basically. So it's half a psi, which is nothing. Air temp. This is the air temp in the manifold, but it's useless because the methanol is basically squirting directly onto it. So I have another air temperature sensor that's actually in the intake pipe. A little bit scared to look at it because it's probably a monumental number that I don't really want to take a lot of notice of, to be honest, because I can't do anything about it. So something we can have a look at here is a wastegate position. So the wastegate position sensor, you can see here, it's doing nothing, and then all of a sudden it's open here to control the boost as per it's meant to. So that's pretty much it for the data. That's everything here is working fine. Yeah, and now essentially what it means is I can go to the dyno with confidence. It's one of the great things about having a car with an auto in it is you can tune it in your own garage, basically. You want to tune it up, bring it up in the transbrake, put a fair bit of load into it. It'll give you a really good idea of where you need to be in terms of tune-wise. So hopefully now it means we go to the dyno. It's been under load. It's been under high manifold pressure and fuel pressure, oil pressure. There's no leaks. Means we should be in a really good place now to go there and not have any real surprises like, yeah, the tune-up's so far out of the window that we've got to spend the next, 30 minutes just doing some steady state tuning or something, or building a map. So hopefully basically means we can go to the dyno and put some RPM and boost into it, and we just see a curve go whoop, all the way up here somewhere, and happy days. And that'll be that. So I know the last 20 minutes might not have been everyone's cup of tea, and it's not what you might be expecting from me or from this channel, but I made it pretty clear a fair while ago that the reason I actually created this channel was to do some tech videos, sort of during, when we couldn't really be apart, but some tech videos that don't really fit on full boost, and a bit more in-depth and longer sort of version of tech videos, but also mainly to, be a sister sort of content thing for the, my racing program, so to speak. So where full boost will show the really cool racing shots and all the drag racing stuff and the build stuff behind the series, edited really nicely and slickly. What I want to do, which is what you just saw there, is basically when we go racing, I want to take you on the journey on the debrief basically of after racing, on maybe what we did before to set up the car to get ready for racing, if there's been any little changes, but then mainly the debrief of, let's look at the data, let's look at every pass, what happened, what did we have the shock set on, did we change a bar angle, did we put more boost into it, did we alter this, did we alter that, whatever, and what the effects are on the pass and on the car that had, what the track was like on the day, where we're racing, all these kinds of things, just for that kind of entertainment purpose of maybe something a little bit more technical rather than just a bit of, let's go racing and everything happened and yeah, we did some passes and high fives all around sort of thing. I want to pretty much dive a little bit more into the actual data and tuning side of racing rather than just the, yeah, we turned some spanners and here's me filling it with oil and things like that. So we'll still do plenty of that. That'll probably be on full boost, and all the other great racing stuff as always will be on there. But this channel going forward will be when you see this car racing on full boost, you'll be able to know that you can probably check out a video within the coming days that'll basically debrief that whole race event on detail like we just did before. So if you like that kind of stuff and you're looking for more tech stuff on to maybe expand your mind on this, I'm not an expert either, so I'd love to learn with everyone at the same time. But yeah, that's the kind of stuff we'll have going forward. Still do plenty of tech videos. Eventually, once we start building that RX4, we'll probably have some build stuff on that, no doubt. And if I ever do any customers cars, we can go through that. But that's pretty much it for now. Hopefully it's not over a month before we do the next video. So hopefully, yeah, we can get to the dyno in the next couple of weeks, and then I can do a debrief on what happened at the dyno and go over all the data for you, and then prep for our race debut. But until next time, I'll see you later.